Good evening, class. Good afternoon, or maybe good morning, whatever time you're accessing this class. So, you are already familiar. We've started some video sessions last week. We posted Manthan 2.0 analysis. I will continue on a very similar note today as well. Today, however, instead of doing Manthan 2.0, we are going to discuss the CL mocks. Right? Yes, you heard it right. We've had a couple of mocks recently. So I'm going to discuss the CL mocks. We're going to do a mock analysis only for my subject of general knowledge. This is going to be a regular feature from now on. We will be going through each of the passages in the mocks and trying to figure out what could have been the best way to answer. So there are two aspects which I will be targeting in these classes, the mock analysis classes. One is how you could have answered whatever knowledge you already have, right? सो क्या आपके पास नॉलेज था और उस नॉलेज को आप कैसे इस्तेमाल कर सकते थे या कर सकते हो, तो वो पहला टास्क होगा. दूसरा होगा, आई विल टीच ऑन दोज टॉपिक्स, राइट? सम ऑफ दोज टॉपिक्स आई हैव डिस्कस्ड इन क्लासेस, सम ऑफ द अदर्स आई विल बी डिस्कसिंग स्लाइटली ग्रेटर डिटेल. Wonderful. So on that basis, let me begin. So we are discussing the 15th mock this year. This is a CLAT mock, as you can see, with the passage. There's a long passage, and there are total 28 questions in this CLAT mock. 5 passages, the first 4 of them 6 questions each, the fifth one has 4 questions. So let me start straight on. I think you guys are well aware that reading the entire passage in GK is not necessary. You can read this one if you want, and this is, I think, pretty obvious. It is about a very important topic, about PM Modi taking oath for the third time as Prime Minister of India. So it talks about the elections of this year, and I think everyone here is aware that this time there is a coalition government with the BJP at the head and several other parties. Some of those parties are mentioned here, like the Telugu Desam Party and the Janata Dal United, which are a couple of the key allies. Anyway, I am not getting too much into this, otherwise एक टॉपिक में बहुत टाइम लग जाएगा. मैं सीधा क्वेश्चंस पे पहुंचता हूँ. चलिए, let's go ahead. Let me look at each and every question. The first question is, what is a coalition government, right? So this is something that we will need to understand. What exactly is a coalition government? So I want you to take a look at the 4 options. I think this is one of the easiest questions you could have got. A government formed by a single political party, by several political parties joining hands, run by the head of the state, which is not possible in India's case. Remember, in India, okay, I'll just share some important insights on each of those points. So let's start. The first thing I would like to tell you guys is that in India, the head of state is the president. The president is the head of state, but not the head of government, and thus this is not possible in our country. It is possible under some circumstances, but definitely not under the stable circumstances that we have now. King or queen obviously does not apply to India's case. Single political party was the last 2 elections, although even then there was an NDA that contested on several seats, but one of those parties got absolute majority on its own. This time, however, there is a coalition government. So absolutely correct. The answer is B, several political parties. And I think I discussed some of them. The Telugu Desam Party and the Janata Dal United are 2 of the leading allies. The Telugu Desam Party has 16 seats, all of them in the state of Andhra Pradesh, while the Janata Dal United has 12 seats, all of them in the state of Bihar. So these 2 parties together have 28 seats. Plus, if you add some of their allies, the allies of these parties, then that number crosses 30. So yeah, these 2 are extremely important parties, and their leaders are very important at this stage. So I want you guys to stay alert to any news that comes out of these 2 personalities. Mr. Nitish Kumar, who has been multiple times the Chief Minister of Bihar, also former Rail Minister of India, and Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who is I'll write it here because of space constraints. So, Chandrababu Naidu, he is the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh for the 4th time. He became the CM for the first time in 1995. Repeated that a few years later, was out of power for 10 years, came back in 2014, lost power in 2019, and now come back for a 4th term. So both of them, any news on these 2 people, you will have to keep your eyes and ears alert. So whenever I'm sharing articles on them on the Telegram GK group, please follow them with a lot of interest. So anyway, this is the first question. Now let me move on to the second question, right? Okay, so I hope you guys have already taken in this. Let's go on to the next one. Right. Now, this is a rather interesting question. It says, what was the first coalition government that completed its 5-year term in India? Now, this is something, इसके actually दो answers है. अगर इसको इस फॉर्मेट में पूछा जाए तो I will go with Atal Bihari Vajpayee. That is the answer. He did complete a full 5-year term. In fact, let me move to the next, not the next one, the question number 28. I want you to look at question 26 and 28 together. 27 बाद में करेंगे. 27 is quite straightforward. 26 का आंसर है Mr. Vajpayee. And 28 का answer 1977. So I wanted to tell you a couple of interesting points on both of them. Till 1977, for 30 years after the independence, the Indian National Congress won every national election. They did lose a few state elections here and there, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Bengal, a few here and there. They did have some reverses, but nationally they dominated lock, stock and barrel. 1977 is when they lost an election for the first time. This was immediately after the emergency. The party that was then formed was the Janta Party, right? So Janta Party is possibly not a name you hear of these days. Some iteration may exist, but generally this party is not in play anymore. Janta Party was actually a merger between the Bharatiya Jan Sangh. The Jan Sangh was the predecessor of the BJP. Then there were a couple of socialist parties and couple of Congress factions. So they merged together to form this party. So this was the first. However, they could not complete a full 5-year term. Then in 1989, we had another coalition government. In 1991, there was a minority government. So I want all of you to note down, in case anybody asks you, 1991 till 1996 was a minority government. This means a coalition government has majority. In India, 272 seats is the minimum you need to form government. So no government in India had 272. If any coalition, like currently, has 272 or more seats, then they are that's a coalition government. Minority is when you have less than 272, but you still run a government because the opposition parties cannot come together, or some of the opposition parties have extended support to you. They are not your allies, but they've extended support to you. So 1991 to 96 was the only occasion we had a minority government. It wasn't technically, they completed full 5-year term, but it wasn't technically a coalition government, right? So in this question 26, we cannot include PV Narasimha Rao either, right? Because that was not a coalition government. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he was sworn in for little less than 2 weeks in 1996. Apart from that, in 1998, he formed a coalition government. It was in 1999 when he formed the government that he ran a full term. I did not say a full 5-year term. There is the devil in the details. Dhyan se suniye. So Mr. Vajpayee completed a full term 99 to 2004. So it was the first coalition government to complete a full term. But agar question mein pucha jaye 5-year term, that this one will not be able to justify, because his term, what happened in 2003 winter was that the BJP swept several state elections. Then they were quite confident that because of their India Shining campaign, they will definitely win another election. 2004, they actually dissolved the parliament 6 months before time. They did not win that election. So it is a 4.5-year government, right? So they did not complete full 5 years. It's 4.5 years government. It is a full term because they dissolved it out of their own wish. अपनी खुशी से उन्होंने उसको dissolve किया, तो full term का credit मिलेगा, but not 5-year term. The first to complete 5-year term, right? I told you, devil in the details. That is Dr. Manmohan Singh. 2004 to 2009 was the first full 5-year coalition government that ran in India. ठीक है, तो इन चीजों को प्लीज थोड़ा सा ध्यान से देखिए, इनको अलग से लिख लेना. 27th question, I think, is very easy. Regional parties they bring in, regional factors and pressures, very important in a country as large and as diverse as India. So hopefully for the people in Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, their aspirations will be better matched this time, because their strong leaders are now part of the central government, right? So this is something which brings in, and not just now, even if you have a one party crossing the government, the fact that when you have regional allies, it helps to bring schemes and developmental factors for the regional parties. Great. There are 2 more questions that we are going to cover. क्विकली मैं इसको डिलीट कर देता हूं. ठीक है, सो थोड़ा सा जनता पार्टी के बारे में पढ़ लेना, because anything to do with the history of elections, remember, whenever you have these kind of questions, you could be having historical questions as well, right? So a lot of passages you could be having past years papers, okay, past years topics as well. Major disadvantage, I am not sure we should call it a disadvantage, but yeah, there is a possibility of a disadvantage. I think that's a better term. This is instability due to withdrawal of support. हो सकता है कभी. Currently it seems possible but unlikely, because as I said, the ruling party, the single largest party, has 240 odd seats, right? So even if one large coalition partner withdraws, they will still be close to majority, right? So unless two large coalition partners withdraw together, that is not happening now. But yes, there have been, so I will divide coalitions into two types, right? So we have strong coalitions led by parties which have X number of seats. So Vajpayee's NDA government, or Dr. Manmohan Singh's UPA 2 terms, as well as the current NDA. These are coalition governments where the single largest party has good number of seats. 180 in the case of the BJP in 1999. 145 Congress in 2004, 200 plus in 2009 the Congress, this time the BJP, as I said, around 240, the ballpark figure. So these are strong coalitions. We've also had some weak coalitions like 1989. That is where the single largest party within that group does not have much control. So that is when these things can happen, instability due to withdrawal. So there's a lot of leverage that one person gets to break down the government. Moving on to the next question, the last one within this. 1977, I told you, was the first time that the Congress lost. Please take a look at this question. I'm blocking your view. So yeah, isko dekh lijiye zara, all of you. ठीक है, सो इसका क्या इंपॉर्टेंस था 1977 में जो हुआ था? It effectively ended the one party dominance of the Congress. It did not fully end it, because the Congress came back to power 2 years later, and then they were in power for another 2 terms. So it did not fully end it, but yes, nonetheless, it was a dent on the might at that time, invincibility at that time of the Indian National Congress. Right? So we are done with the first passage. And I think these were very straightforward, easy questions, especially in an election year. Anything to do with election this year, you have to keep your eyes and ears open. And I think I have shared n number of articles with you guys on elections. We will also start a series where we can discuss major topics this year. Elections is definitely one of them. So do watch out for that space. A couple of things this year's election you must take into perspective for CLAT. One is the Model Code of Conduct, very important. There is also something called what's it called? So one is the Model Code of Conduct. You need to look at Nota, the importance of Nota. You will also need to see a couple of cases where some candidates withdrew from a seat. So for example, in Surat, we did not have elections. In Indore and in Khajuraho, elections were held, but some of the leading opposition members, they could not contest. And opposition parties, I mean. Similarly, we had a very remote location in Ladakh, which where the election was held. The islanders in the Nicobar Islands, they voted for the first time. You must look at some of the heavy victory margins, like in Assam, one of the seats a candidate won by 10 lakh votes. So these are a couple of trivial but important aspects. I will discuss those with you in one of the sessions. Anyway, moving on quickly to one of the most exciting topics, and I know a lot of students are keen about this. You know, immediately after this mock was held, I got at least 15 messages from different students who wanted to understand Nagorno-Karabakh. They felt cheated. They said, sir, you have discussed with us Palestine, you've discussed with us Ukraine, what about Armenia? So yes, I will be discussing with you Armenia today, definitely. A lot of my students do enjoy a lot of the sessions when I take on, geography based, and that is something which I'm going to continue today. There is a reason the word geopolitics begins with geo, because it's about location. A lot of political aspects, a lot of fight for resources is regarding the location, right? So that is where we need to understand. So Nagorno-Karabakh crisis involves a country called Armenia. Many of you may not have heard of this country. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm using Google Maps here. So I want to show all of you. मैंने zoom out जानबूझ के किया ताकि आपको bigger context मिले. This is India, this is China, these are West Asian countries, this is Central Asia, this is Russia, this is Europe, and this is North Africa, this is the Middle East, this is Turkey. सब जानते हो ये सब चीजें. But मैं एक एरिया पे फोकस लाना चाहता हूँ, दैट इज दिस स्लाइवर ऑफ लैंड. दिस मैं जूम इन करके कंट्रीज दिखाऊंगा. अभी आप कंट्री मत देखिए, बस ब्रॉडर पिक्चर में लोकेशन देखिए. इन कंट्रीज को यहाँ पे एक माउंटेन रीजन है called the let me write it more clearly, and maybe I can write it on the ocean, that will be clearer. Caucasus. Caucasus. So Caucasus, the Caucasian mountains, these are known as, right? So why am I focusing so much on the spelling? That is because some of you may have heard of this word in the past. A lot of you, when you've done debating or quizzing or MUNing, you may have heard this term Caucasian, जिनको हम चलती भाषा में white बोलते हैं. Actually, the race that we can call them, although the word race is again a bit debatable, but nonetheless, they are often known as Caucasian. So white people is what we call them, chalti bhasha mein, but it's actually Caucasian, because it is believed by anthropologists that people who are white skinned, they originated from this plot of land. Around 30,000 years back, they split from this region and then they went further west to Europe. So Europeans are Caucasians, and this is where their their community, their race, whatever began. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे in particular there are a couple of countries. Let me now zoom in so that you get a better idea. I have to zoom in using the laptop. Let's go in now. तो मैंने आर्मीनिया का सर्च डाला था इसमें सर्च डेटा में. So this is Armenia. I hope all of you can see this country. There is Georgia here, and this is Azerbaijan. Georgia, nowadays lots of Indians are visiting for travel purposes. You know, it's become a very popular tourist destination for a lot of Indians because, you know, ease in visa facilities, etc. Similarly, Azerbaijan, a lot of Indians are visiting as well. So these are some interesting countries that we will be talking about today. There are these three countries over here. Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Georgia we are not discussing now, we're just discussing these two. So just a little bit of country profile on both of them. Armenia is a country of a population between 3 to 4 million, about 3.5 million, and it's predominantly Christian. It's a country in terms of most of the people are Christians, and there are some Muslims and some Jews, but predominantly a Christian country. But here again, they belong to a particular church known as the Armenian Orthodox Church, which is, you can say, related to the Russian Orthodox Church or the Greek Orthodox Church, but it is much older than those two. So again, therein lies the story. Armenia was actually one of the first countries in the world which adopted Christianity, right? So while Christianity was born in the Middle East, and several people or some people in the Middle East adopted Christianity, there were also some early waves of people who adopted Christianity in Ethiopia, for example, which is in Africa, and of course in the Indian state of Kerala, some parts of Europe. But the first country, as per the modern definition, which entirely adopted Christianity was actually Armenia, right? So that's why some of the churches in Armenia, they're very old. In Europe, a 700, 600-year-old church is considered very old. In Armenia, there are churches which are 1400, 1000-year-old, 1500-year-old churches, right? So they're like really old, and many of them are now, of course, in ruins because it's been a bit of time. Armenians have also been amongst, if you look at their history, there has been a lot of suffering that the Armenians have received. And if I look at the last 100 years, there has been an incident which is known as the Armenian genocide. Now, that is not something which is openly acknowledged by everyone, but nonetheless, there is, I'll just write it down. It is an alleged Armenian genocide. This was between 1915 to 1918. As you can understand, this is in between the First World War, and the perpetrators was the Ottoman Empire in Turkey. Now, Turkey does not per se acknowledge this, and even India does not openly talk about it because that was a different Turkey. That has nothing to do with the current Turkey. That was an Ottoman Empire. Now Turkey is a democracy. So again, it has nothing to do about that. But the only thing is that the Armenian people suffered enormously. Now Armenia wants this event to be given much more importance. They feel that their suffering was as much as the Jewish Holocaust, which happened at the hands of Nazi Germany. So they also feel that their plight has not been highlighted enough. Azerbaijan is a country culturally very close to Turkey, so that again adds to the sort of rivalry between the countries. Azerbaijan is a much wealthier country than Armenia. Its population is around 10 million, and predominantly most of the people are Muslim. Most of them are Muslim. In fact, they follow the Shia branch of Islam. I think you know, among Muslims, you have Sunnis and Shias. So Azerbaijan is one of the 4 countries in the world where most people follow the Shia faith. Azerbaijan's culture is very similar to Turkey, but so language is similar. Religion, there are some differences. Now, moving on to this war in particular between the countries. During the time of the Soviet Union, there was this place, and I want you to understand the name of this place. It was known as Artsakh, the Republic. This is a place that you must pay a lot of attention to, a so-called Republic of Artsakh. Now, why am I calling it so-called? Because it's an international dispute. I cannot really say much about it, but this dispute of Artsakh, the idea was that deep within Azerbaijan, not bordering Armenia, but within Azerbaijan territory, there was a sliver of land which was Armenian dominated. So while it was part of the USSR, it was anyway an extremely multilingual country, a country having Russians, Ukrainians, Baltic states, you know, like the Estonians. You had these guys, Romanians in Moldova. You had Kazakhs, Uzbeks, Azeris. So that's okay. It was a mix of a lot of people. But once they divided into linguistic nations, that is when Armenia felt that this Artsakh, this area called Artsakh, should either merge with Armenia or retain its independence. Russia, for a while, was inclined to support Armenia. So in the initial wars, Russia supported Armenia, and Artsakh remained a semi-independent place for the last 3 decades. But now the equation has changed. I'm going to go back to the original page. So just one last thing before I go back to the original mock page. Azerbaijan, as I said, has a lot of gas, and in fact, its economy has benefited in the last couple of years since the time that the Russia-Ukraine war began, because Azerbaijan is now able to sell more gas, because you know there are sanctions on Russia, so Azerbaijan is sort of taken advantage of the situation, and Europe is now buying a lot of gas from Azerbaijan. Right, now moving on to this particular portion, let's talk about this. Let's go back to the original page, because you know writing and all is easier here. Now, if there is any question that who owns Nagorno-Karabakh currently, at this point there is absolutely no dispute. Unlike the Russia-Ukraine war, which is dragged on, and it's sort of at a stalemate right now, the Armenia-Azerbaijan is now settled, and it's internationally recognized that Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan only, right? Armenia has also accepted. They've even surrendered. There's been a massive flight of ethnic Armenians away from Nagorno-Karabakh region to this place, to mainland Armenia, because Azerbaijan has claimed this place. Now, the first war between the two countries, it ended in 1994. Initially, it was in the favor of Armenia, as I said. But Azerbaijan regrouped in the next 2.5 decades. They formed alliances. They came back in 2020. In 2020, Azerbaijan had an advantage. 2023, they took advantage of the advantage and they pushed on, and now it's game settled, right? It was Russia that brokered the deal, although Turkey also played a role in it. And I want you to also understand that this war began in 1988. This was before Soviet Union actually collapsed. So while the Soviet Union was still on, conflicts had started. But 1994 it got over. The second one, it was brokered by Russia, although Turkey did play an important role. I'll talk about it. I'll go back to this question. One of the biggest impact of this Armenia-Azerbaijan war has been on the CSTO. So now, Many of you might wonder, why is CL giving you a mock on two tiny countries? One, the population of 4 million, less than 4 million, the other barely 10 million. If I combine the population, still less than the population of New Delhi, less than the population of Kolkata or Mumbai. Why are we even talking about that? Of course, every country is important. One, it is also, this war is like a proxy war between Russia and Turkey. This loss of Armenia has felt sort of betrayed, and Armenia has often felt that this war, Russia has been unable to protect Armenia, right? So that has been one very big outcome of this thing, right? The other thing about this has been the fact that Russia heads an organization called the CSTO, which is considered like a Russian NATO. So as per NATO and as per CSTO, any of its members is attacked, the others are bound to protect that nation. So by that logic, Russia should have had the back of Armenia, should have protected them. That apparently has not happened because Armenia has lost this war. Azerbaijan, on the other hand, is a close ally of Turkey, and Turkey has sort of won. And Turkey has supplied Azerbaijan with a lot of weapons during this war, especially drones. Turkish drones are very well known, and they have created a lot of chaos on it, right? So, in a way, it is the rising force of Turkey which has sealed itself as the winner in this war. Now, what has been the impact on India? I'm going to discuss that as well. Now, the Western countries in the last 2 years have lectured India quite a bit. In fact, as I speak, PM Modi is in Russia. He's had meetings with Russian President Mr. Vladimir Putin. And the West has been lecturing India the last couple of years that why are we not doing enough for Ukraine? Why are we not condemning Russia? Why aren't we closing off ties with Russia? That is what the West has been telling us. India's response has been cautious. Of course, we care about the people of Ukraine, but what about the people of Armenia? They are fellow Europeans. Why is Europe doing nothing about Armenia? Maybe because they're buying gas from Azerbaijan. That has been India's response. So that is where we need to look into this, right? So what has been the biggest impact is that Armenia now has better ties with India. Not just India, Armenia has also had ties. I want you to note down, Armenia has opened up alternative ties with France and USA. US, of course, old rival or enemy of Russia. France, on the other hand, is a country with which Russia has been sparring a lot in the last 12 months, especially because they're having an alternate civil war in Africa. Now, we'll talk about that some other day. But yes, Russia and France, they're not the best of friends at this point. Another shocking thing Armenia has done is they have joined the ICC, the International Criminal Court. International Criminal Court is not like the ICJ. The ICJ, the verdicts are not binding, plus it's a UN body. ICC, on the other hand, the International Criminal Court, the terms are binding, and it's a private organization. So as per the terms of the ICC, now this is the exciting part. Exciting in terms of, look at the impact, is that Vladimir Putin, as per the ICC, is a war criminal. So if he's a war criminal, by that logic, Armenia has to arrest him. Next time he lands up in Armenia, Armenia is bound to arrest him. Of course, they might not go to that extent, but nonetheless, joining ICC is a very big, you can say, step towards having more Western policies rather than pro-Russia, right? So you never know. Armenia could be the next Ukraine, the next Moldova, which is taking westward steps towards the EU. Anyway, moving on to the next thing, I also wanted to tell you about CSTO. CSTO is full of countries that used to be part of the USSR, and last year Armenia was supposed to host the drills. They did not do that. They refused because of this sort of feeling of betrayal. Okay, moving on to the next part. Now, what has India done? India now has terms with Armenia, so we are selling them the Pinaka rocket launchers, right? This is a very exciting deal for India. So India has used this situation to tell the West that we care about Armenia. At the same time, we are doing business with them through Pinaka. Okay, moving on to the next topic then. Okay, let's go down. So CSTO is like the NATO. I think I've already discussed this. Yeah, so this is like the NATO. This I've already discussed. And the part of the 2002 charter, pretty obvious. I told you it is about defense. It has nothing to do with trade, economic growth, or scientific research, but predominantly a security initiative, um, NATO is, right? So please थोड़ा सा ये topic देख लेना अच्छे से. One of the most important topics of the last 4 years, I would say. It's been constantly moving in and on. So this has been a pretty important topic. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. थोड़ा सा देख लेना about the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan, as I said, predominantly Muslim country, but with a secular constitution. In fact, the current leader, has he and his father, they have been the president of Azerbaijan since Azerbaijan gained independence. So the last 30 years, it is father son who have been ruling the country. They were former members of the Communist Party. So yes, they have quite secular kind of organization, the way Azerbaijan is run. Right. Moving on to the next question. Next topic. So the first one was about elections in India. Second one about a global issue. Third is about pollution, which is also a global issue, except that this one is more science centric. The most polluted country in the world, as per now, you need to know whenever there are these indexes, you need to know which country which organization has published this index. This is by IQ Air. IQ Air becomes the important organization here. This is an organization based in Switzerland. ठीक है, तो इसका प्लीज हेडक्वार्टर देख लें. इट्स अ प्राइवेट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, फॉर प्रॉफिट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. दिस इज बांग्लादेश. Most polluted city. Now, this is something Begusarai, which is in Bihar. Just to give you an anecdote, Begusarai has an interesting nickname. It is known as the Leningrad of Bihar because it's often been a stronghold of the Communist Party in the past, right? So that is an interesting tale. Of course, nothing to do with this question, but just wanted to provide an anecdote because sometimes that helps people remember. However, do you need to remember this? I do not know because this kind of data will keep changing. So if it's Begusarai now, there is no guarantee 4 months down the line it will be Begusarai. This is a dynamic question, right? So hold your horses on this. There could be changes to it. However, the next question, 39th, this is something which is static, and because this is something that the WHO has recommended, तो इसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं आएगा. मैं चाहता हूँ आप थोड़ा सा WHO पे पढ़ लीजिए. You need to know who's the current head. In fact, he has been the head even before the pandemic. He was front page every day during the pandemic. So WHO का headquarter, year of formation, and the current head, ये सब देख लेना. Right. So these are things that you will need to look into. Right. Okay. Let's take a look at the next question. The AQI developed for India it does not have methane. Now, isme you must understand that every country has its own parameter. Mostly it's similar, but in India's case, we do not include methane. Okay. Let's go to the next part then of this question. Like GRAP. GRAP has been one of the major outcomes. This is how India plans to tackle this whole thing. So please take a look at this. It's pretty obvious since we are trying to reduce air pollution. It has nothing to do with weather. Weather is again a very complex pattern. Water again, air quality again, it's not part of it. It's air pollution. कितना pollution है? कौन सी pollutants है इसमें? So air quality की बात नहीं. It is about air pollution. The answer is B. And integral part of the air quality warning, this I told you, is SAFAR. So please आप लोग SAFAR का full form देख लेना. In fact, let me just share that with you guys. I mean, I do have an idea, but it's better to be safe rather than sorry. So let me give you the exact full form. Yeah, System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research. ठीक है? So System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research. तो इसको प्लीज आप लोग लिख लीजिए. Right? Okay. Let's do the next passage then. The next one is a historical passage. So it is about some historical events. Why are we talking of Jallianwala Bagh? Pretty obvious. That's because of the question last year. All of you have guessed it, right? Last year, one of the passages during the actual clat was about the Jallianwala Bagh incident. So that is why we are going to discuss about one of the great tragedies that befell India. Right. So the first massacre, the first question is about the date. Please remember this date is particularly significant because a couple of years back we had our 100 years that was completed, and so this is 13th of April. Yeah, 13th of April 1919. ठीक है मैं थोड़ा और ऊपर कर लेता हूँ so that we can do all the questions at one go. Yeah, 13th April in 1919 is when this was done a few years back. The original happened more than 100 years back, but few years back we had the 100th of them. Okay, the Satyagraha to oppose Rowlatt Act, and Rowlatt Act was one of the triggers behind this congregation of people in Amritsar. So this is Mahatma Gandhi. Rowlatt Act was one of the most draconian policies the British had started, according to which any Indian could be imprisoned without trial for up to 3 years. So that is something that was seen as very draconian. That is in spite of India's support to Britain during the First World War. So that was seen as quite a risky thing. Okay, moving on to the next part. Yeah, the next question is about the people who did this protest. I think some of the names are quite instructive. Bhagat Singh and Sukhdev, they emerged later, so their time is yet to come. Patukeshwar Dutt, he did a lot of his work in Bengal, plus of course he was working with Sukhdev. So the answer is actually A. If you go by the elimination method, the answer is A. They were the ones who organized this peaceful movement here. Okay, the Brigadier General, very easy question. Reginald Dyer, everyone knows. He was actually Irish. So his spelling you'll find in many places as O Dwyer, right? With a W and with an O before that, because a lot of Irish people use these names. So he was actually Irish. The commission which was set up to deal with this, I think again through method of elimination you can do it. It can't be Lytton, can't be Simon, can't be Welby. It has to be Hunter Commission. There were actually 2 Hunter Commissions and both of them had a different purpose. तो मैं थोड़ा सा अगर आपको Hunter Commission के बारे में बात करूँ, so there was one Hunter Commission. The one we are talking about here, obviously 1919, immediately after this thing happened. There was also an original one in 1885, which was about spreading English language education. So not to confuse between the two. 1919 was for the investigation to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. 1885 was for the educational report. Simon Commission, all of you know, that was in 1927. That is around the time that India was fighting tooth and nail for its independence. And by the time that, a lot of, the independence, this thing had really stepped on, right? So Simon Commission, one of the most controversial ones because it did not have Indians in its in its entire team, right? So that is where it became a big problem, right? And thus, I think all of you are aware there was this Simon Go Back, slogan that was shouted after that. The Lytton Commission, this was 1932. This had nothing to do with India. This was about the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Manchuria is a region in China. So the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, that is what this one dealt with, because Japan was again a rising force at that time, and they were looking at this thing. They were looking at dominating. So China was one of the first countries that they started dominating. Welby Commission is 1895. This is about the wasteful expenditure of the government of India, right? So these were the 4 major things. I just thought I'll just discuss these other things as well with you guys. ठीक है? So this passage is done. I think one more question remains. आप एक बार इसको देख लीजिए. Hunter Commission 2 बार आया है. Lytton Commission, nothing to do directly with India. Welby Commission, 1895. Simon Commission, all of you know, 1927 is when they departed. And that, of course, met with a lot of resistance. Right, moving on. I think there's one more question in this. Yeah, one more. It's again, I think, quite an obvious question. This is to enforce martial law. Martial law is where that was to be under the military's command. Okay, so yeah, one last passage that we are going to discuss. This is a shorter passage because there are only 4 questions from this. So let's quickly do this one. Right, so this is about air traffic management and about the Ishan initiative. Ishan initiative, Ishan का full form एक बार please देख लीजिएगा. The idea is to combine all the different flight information regions. Now, this is a very important line. I want all of you to take a look at this one. And there is a sub FIR. There's a sub FIR which is currently in Guwahati. I think you know that's a city in Assam. And the 4 flight FIRs, they are in the 4 regional metropolitans in the country. So New Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, that's where we have these 4, right? If you want, I'll just write them here. So this is an important part. Isko thoda dekh lijiye. Now all of them will now be brought together under a single banner in Nagpur. Nagpur is almost in the middle of the country. If you look at the location of Nagpur, it is almost in the middle of the country. Space is a bit less for me to write here. But nonetheless, I think you can make out. Right? So New Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and Chennai is where we have the 4 FIRs now, and one sub FIR which is which has slightly lesser this thing powers, that is in Guwahati. But now Nagpur will have one single one. Okay? So yehi hai, and these are a couple of important people who will look into all of this. Now let's take a look quickly at the questions and then we'll be done with this mock analysis. I've taken about 40 minutes, so quite a bit of time, but I think that much is needed. 4 airspace regions into a single entity. This is obviously to improve the air traffic management, right? Quite obvious. Air traffic management को improve करने के लिए ये किया गया है. Second question मुझे थोड़ा सा order लगा. Your answer puts it at Chennai and Kolkata. I think it should be both A and B. That's what I personally feel. I'll get back to you on this. I'll discuss with a few people. Look at the next 2 questions. 52nd, I've already told you. 4 and 1. The 51st is, this is the biggest challenge because obviously how do you retrain staff? कभी कभी ना ऑप्शन देख के आपको पता चल जाएगा जहां पे बहुत ज्यादा सिंपलिस्टिक चीजें हैं, जैसे 49th में 51st में इट्स टू सिंपलिस्टिक. बेसिक कॉमन सेंस देखकर इट्स ऑलमोस्ट लाइक एन आरसी. 49th एंड 51st आपको पैसेज से ही दिख जाएगा ना. इसमें भी थोड़ा डाउट है बच्चों को, स्टूडेंट्स को, कि क्या हम पूरा पैसेज पढ़े या ना पढ़े. दैट इज अ वेरी बिग क्वेश्चन दैट अ लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स हैव. So yeah, iska answer, it's difficult for me to say right now. I think you'll have to judge based on the question. If it's a very easy paper, then I think you'll get a lot of answers in it. But if it's not, that means it'll be separate. And I think this year it'll be a tough paper because last year it was too easy, and that became a bit of a how do I put it? There was some criticism from a lot of people. Too easy means cutoffs will be very high, right? So that is the thing. So इसमें आप काफी हद तक समझ सकते हो. 52nd is straightforward. It's from the passage itself, right? The other passages, the first 4 that we discussed, उसमें those are definitely not RCs. This one is a bit of an RC. 50th question मुझे थोड़ा वो लग रहा है. So I'll take a look at this. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed and you learnt out of this. Thank you so much, everyone. See you guys very soon. Thank you.